Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 126. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here on this Friday, Steelers Nation. Dave, how you doing?
I tell you, not too great after that Penguins game last night. We had a lot more positive things to say the last time we were on, following the Tuesday, I guess Tuesday night game there, and they got it handed to them pretty good there in New York. But I guess if I would have guaranteed everybody that the Penguins would be 1-1 with the series going back to Pittsburgh, everybody would have probably taken that. And I don't think they would have liked not having their not having their top two goaltenders at this point. But going to be an interesting series the rest of the way here. So hold on to your hats.
It certainly will be. And so, Game 3, I think, will be played on Saturday.
Didn't the Pirates split a doubleheader or something like that? Or
yeah, they split with Detroit the other day. I don't think they played yesterday.
I don't think they did either.
Maybe they got rained out. I'm not quite sure what happened there. But so that's the look around other Pittsburgh sports. We'll talk about the Steelers today. A little bit later in the show, we'll have a Steelers Depot roundtable as we did Wednesday, this time with Tom Mead. You can follow him on Twitter at THMead3, and also new to the show and relatively new to the site, we'll have Andrew Shaver. You can follow him on Twitter, and you should follow him on Twitter at ashaver13. And so we're excited to talk to him. He's got some really good statistical studies, has one on the Steelers inside zone running game that we'll probably talk about a little bit later with him. Dave, for the Steelers and news, not a whole lot going on today. One thing, and probably the most notable thing to note right now, is Pittsburgh has begun their second round of interviews to replace Kevin Colbert as the Steelers' next GM, according to NFL Network yesterday. Two names that we know are part of that second round of interviews include the Titans' Ryan Cowden and the Buccaneers' John Spytek. Spytek did work with Pittsburgh very early in his professional career. And so Mike Garofalo from NFL Network says others will interview as well. We don't know how many finalists or second round of interviews there will be, but we know there's at least two and others to come.
Yeah, a lot of the names all the names that you just discussed, we've had on a list for a while here. So, not much more to add than to just interested to watch the process, I guess, play out, at this point. I guess there are some that thinks that Weidl might kind of, of the outsiders, or not named Brandon Hunt and Omar Khan, it seems to have the best chance. That's the sense that I get. But obviously, I don't know how much speculation is that. I obviously don't have any inside information in that.
Right. Yeah, it's hard to gauge these kinds of things. I will say, Kevin Colbert did talk about Andy Weidl in an interview with Dan Silo as Colbert kind of made a big media tour, I believe on Wednesday it was. And Silo said at one point that Colbert told him that he recommended Weidl to be the finalist, to be the replacement, but telling Art, you should pick Andy Weidl as my replacement. I listened back to that interview, and I know you did as well, Dave.
Right.
I don't believe that to be true. I think what Colbert had said was he recommended Weidl to be part of that initial list of 16, because what happened was Colbert essentially put together that initial list of names, 14 external candidates for Rooney to talk to, and then basically from now, Colbert's removing himself from the process and letting Rooney and now Mike Tomlin jumping in to pick whoever the guy's going to be, with Rooney, of course, getting the final say. So people saw that tweet out there. You didn't know exactly the context of it, and then once we heard the audio, I think Dan's interpretation of it honestly is incorrect.
Yeah, I like old Dan too. Dan sends me some info every now and then. So, but I think maybe he just doesn't have kind of the big picture in this. And if you heard that, not knowing the big long list of candidates, that the Steelers already have, you might be inclined to kind of interpret what Kevin Colbert said as one thing, but I'm with you, and it kind of poked my ears up. You get a tweet like that,
Yeah.
I mean, because that's out of character for Kevin Colbert, to give anything that newsworthy, yeah, he's the one. I recommended to Art Rooney the second to be my replacement. He's not going to go. That's not something that Kevin Colbert does. So I think if people actually, and look, you can go listen to Dan's show if you want the complete interview on YouTube machine. I think it's was it like 2 hours 23 minutes into that or whatnot, but into his show, and I think the interview with Colbert's like, I don't know, 17, 18 minutes long or something like that there. If you want to hear the context for yourself. But as I think Alex has it properly interpreted that, this is just, he recommended that he be one of the guys that interview. And I don't think Kevin Colbert would go as far to saying, look, this is the guy that I recommend take my job.
Right. And it was interesting because Weidl also got his start with Pittsburgh as an intern, but Colbert said he really didn't know him well in Pittsburgh. That Weidl was finishing up his internship with the Steelers when Colbert came on board. And so he was with Pittsburgh for literally a week. Now, of course, they still know each other over the years as Weidl, went to the pro scouting trail. He's with Philadelphia right now. And it is interesting. And I don't think it really matters much for his chances of getting the job, but he's probably, I'm talking about Andy Weidl here, is probably eager to get out of Philadelphia because the Eagles just fired his brother Casey yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever it was. And so a weird dynamic there. But again, that's not going to compel Pittsburgh to hire him, but certainly it's just an interesting footnote there as, scouting departments, front offices. This is the time of year when these things change. Contracts are up and teams start, reshuffling the deck.
And it'll also be interesting too, as this thing moves along, a dynamic that we haven't talked too much about. Obviously, the choice of the general manager is going to be way up there. What's going to happen? Those scouting contracts usually come to an end about right now, right?
Right.
So, and a lot of those guys it's obvious because the way we're able to pick them out in photos have been with the Steelers for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen there? Is the new general manager going to bring in his new set of guys? Do some of these guys have kind of overlapping contracts? So could we see a bit of a shuffle as far as some of these scouts go? What's going to happen to a guy like Rick Rapriche? It's going to be interesting to see some of this play out potentially.
It's a great question, and one I've thought about a bit myself, and I probably will write about, especially if this team makes an outside hire for a GM. If it's internal, it's Brandon Hunt being promoted. Obviously, Hunt's role would have to get replaced, but you would think the scouting staff would largely stay intact. But if it's an outside hire, then really, who knows what will happen. I think certainly there'll be recognition that it's a quality group of guys that have been around the organization for a long time, and Tomlin may want to keep some of those guys, but sure. Could there be guys that leave? Could there be guys that get fired? Could there be guys that are just let go? Could the new GM bring in a couple of his guys? I think all those things are certainly possible. So it'll be interesting to see for sure. And that is one of those elements of a new GM that we don't think about too often, but certainly has a big impact.
Right. And, it's going to be interesting to see what the new dynamic is between Tomlin and the new guy. Obviously when Tomlin came in, Colbert was already there for several years and Tomlin was a new kid on the block. Well, Tomlin, probably much like myself, has certain routines that he does not like broken. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to the pro day trail and all like that. I mean, they've been on this trail together for 15 years right around in there. And I bet they have a certain way that they go about doing this as well too. So I think how important is it to make sure that the guy that you're hiring can get along well with Mike Tomlin?
I think it's the number one thing that you need to have in the hire. And I don't mean that in a buddy sense, go hire someone Tomlin wants to pal around with, obviously not, but somebody who is compatible with Tomlin the way that Colbert and Tomlin had a really special and close relationship for all the years they worked together since 2007. If your GM and your head coach can't work well together, your whole organization is going to be chaos. That's almost a top-down type of thing. I mean, that's what happened with Bill Cowher and Tim Donahoe. I mean, those guys, fought, and one had to go, and it ended up being Donahoe, and Cowher ended up staying. So I think we've heard all the stories about other teams. I think Minnesota had a really icy relationship between Spielman and Mike Zimmer and stuff like that. It's just not healthy for an organization. So obviously there's importance of the evaluator, or who the evaluator is, and his process, and judging, hirings and roster signings and draft picks and all that kind of stuff. But I think really the most important thing you look for in this GM hire is somebody who can have a really healthy, quality relationship with Mike Tomlin.
And do you let that person 100 buy the groceries, or how much, or is Tomlin allowed to help shop for the groceries? All that kind of dynamic, which obviously we don't know much now. But I would think at this point right now, Tomlin and Colbert together have quite a bit of say of the actual products put in the buggy, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, that'll be interesting because it'll be Tomlin, the guy who's been here since 2007, versus if it's an external candidate, a first-time GM, a brand new guy. And that'll be an interesting dynamic as well. So I was asked yesterday, Dave, what is one thing you would like to see the Steelers do in a post-Colbert world, something that they didn't really do under Colbert in terms of the GM side of things? And the only thing I could think of was the analytics side of it, because it's hard to poke holes in Colbert's resume, but I think Colbert's made several references to basically not being big on analytics and recognizing that's the wave of the future, and it's really the wave of the present for other NFL teams.
Yeah, I think that, other than just rehiring Colbert, I hate change, but yeah, look, I think, but you know what? The deeper you get into this, and I'm starting to and I hope to maybe have it today, look more at adjusted completion percentages of all of the top 5 quarterbacks in this year's quarterback class, the other 2 quarterbacks on the Steelers roster right now in Trubisky and Mason Rudolph, and the other first and second round quarterbacks dating back to, I think, 2019, putting those guys all in the blender and looking at their career adjusted completion percentage. I have a feeling the Steelers are a little bit deeper into analytics than maybe we might give them credit for. But in the same breath, I think, look, I mean, it's always been for a while, especially when it comes to the measurable aspects of Rassi and what was Sparky and stuff like that. It seems like the Steelers have been involved with that. Now, how about the statistical elements of players coming out? That might be an area where they could obviously use some growth in. But I have a feeling that in other words, they might be playing a little dumb here when it comes to some of this.
I don't know. I think in the pro game they use it, but I think in the college game, the evaluation process, they really don't. And I still think in the pro game they use, because they've gone through so many analytics people. So many of those guys have left for other jobs, and I'm sure they have it. They use it. It's in a folder somewhere, and probably some more assistants and younger guys use it. But the decision makers, Colbert, Tomlin, they're old school guys, and I don't think they really value that stuff that highly.
All right, but realistically, though, we can every year, the way Colbert's done things is we can whittle this thing down for multiple reasons. Obviously, visits play a big, pro day visits and positional coaches and all like that. But I can look at a measurable of a kid coming out of a combine if I have the full slate of them, and I can tell you height, weight, speed, shuttle. I can look at a good bit of them, and I can tell you whether or not probably that kid's on the Steelers list. Sure.
No, I think on some of those service level type stuff,
right.
Like to me, an RAS score.
You're talking about more college stats type realm.
Yeah, I probably stuff more in depth, probably stuff I'm not even really fully aware of, kind of thing. And it's not only just the analytics existing, but how much do you use them in your evaluation process? And certainly to an extent, Pittsburgh, they want athletic safeties and things like that. We all understand that. But again, overall, Colbert and Tomlin are gut guys. They're tape guys. That's why they hit the pro day trail so hard, because they want to get eyes on these guys, because they are so old school and really value that. And that's not inherently good or bad. And I think Colbert's correct in saying, analytics is becoming a bigger piece to the evaluation process, but you still can't let that drive the bus. And you have to kind of let the analytics match your values and what you see and things like that. So I think he's fair in that respect, but I would expect this team to become heavier in that side of things under a new GM.
Well, let's look at Devin Bush. All right. Could they have relied on analytics more? Just even surface level stuff like I talked about ahead of that with where's the playmaking aspect of it?
Well, it would depend on what's the history of success rate on players who weren't big playmakers in college. I mean, you'd have to look at it at, I think, a bit more of a macro level on some of the college evaluation type stuff.
I mean, and look at it maybe kind of specifically to kind of scheme that he was running under Brown there at Michigan and everything else. But, to me, one of the red flags, obviously, when it came to a guy like Devin Bush, I saw the athleticism and I think late in the process as well, too. I think the further you and I had some of those conversations on Devin Bush, you was like, well, go look at this play over here. And I said, okay, I definitely saw the sideline athleticism when it came to Devin Bush. But what I never saw throughout any majority of his tape was the lack of actual playmaking, and not only that, the lack of actual playmaking against ranked teams. So
sure.
Could just even surface, and that's not deep analytics right
surface
there.
Level.
That's surface level analytics right there. So had even doing that. Look, the tape always speaks the most, right? But I mean, even on tape, I had the sense of where are the plays at, other than the sacks with him, because the sacks were obviously, they're visible when you see those kind of things. So, I mean, and look, it's not like they're going to create any new analytics out there because, I mean, analytics has progressed so fast in the last 5 years. It's not that like they got to go looking for new categories. I mean, that stuff's there for them already.
Sure. My overall point is the Pittsburgh's analytics department, to the best of my knowledge, has basically one guy, Will Britt, who they hired this past year out of college. And other teams will have, staffs of 3-4 guys and people with really extensive resumes and things like that. And not to take anything away from Will Britt, I'm sure he does a good job. I mean, I don't know the man, obviously, but Pittsburgh has just got one dude, and it feels like that kind of sums up where they value analytics.
What is there a particular area that you'd like to see them focus more in analytics?
Well, I mean, it seemed like Colbert said they look at those numbers a bit more in the pro game, than the college game. And so potentially you could do a little more of that in the draft process. I mean, it's hard to know exactly. But
is there a particular kind of statistical or,
I don't know what they use and what they don't use, obviously. Okay. I think sometimes the college game and the prospects, there are good outliers of. If a player isn't hitting these benchmarks, then the odds of his success is happening is really low. Or I saw a stat, the number of Pro Bowl receivers drafted after the third round are extremely small. And so that kind of tells you to get your receivers, on day 2 kind of thing, which Pittsburgh does, but I don't think they do it because the analytics say. So just stuff like that, I think, can be important about creating an overall baseline and kind of thresholds for when you draft guys.
Okay.
So, but speaking of Devin Bush, quickly here, Kevin Colbert was asked about the team declining the 5th-year option on Devin Bush, and he gave us there's 2 Devin Bushes. There was the pre-ACL Devin Bush and the post-ACL Devin Bush, and they had to make a business decision because Bush obviously did not play well last year coming off the injury, but Colbert said the team is not giving up on him. Of course, Colbert's leaving, so, his opinion of that is probably moot at this point.
Look, they need even more than rookie season Devin Bush.
Yeah, they need – I think he was progressing well those first 5 games of his sophomore season. I did see legitimate progress, and he's got to get back to that level and probably exceed that level as well.
Absolutely. I mean, absolutely he does to even get himself in the running of, oh, wow, maybe we made a mistake here. And not picking that up. And now we're going to have to see about now it's going to cost us by placing the franchise tag on him, because make no mistake about it too, if he goes out and has the kind of the season that you're wanting him to have, he's going to be saying it's going to cost you guys. You're going to have to tag me, or I'm going to go see what's out there on the market.
Mm-hmm. Which would be a good problem to have, though. I would be very happy if Bush has a fantastic season and it compels the team to make a decision.
Right. I mean, that's one of the huge questions on this defense right now is what kind of play this team's going to get out of their inside linebackers in 2022. So him answering that question to the fullest would obviously be a fantastic thing for and look, it might be the difference in putting this team winning the division. Something along those lines. Obviously, you're going to have some good play out of your offense and specifically your running game and all those kind of things there. But if the defense doesn't hold up their end of the bargain in 2022, there's absolutely no way this team's going to the playoffs, I don't think.
Right, and this defense has to play at a probably top 5-ish type of level, and Devin Bush has to be a big part of that. And this defense is not, drive the bus, then this team is not going to have a very strong season.
Right.
Yeah, so overall, I mean, if the decision on Devin Bush after this year is an easy one, that's a bad thing. Because if it's an easy one, it means that Bush did not play well and you're going to let him go and just go, find someone else. You want it to be a difficult decision or a complicated type of decision. So that's the word from Colbert on Devin Bush. Colbert also talked about Stephon Tuitt again and again. Seems to be on the optimistic side of him returning, but there's still no confirmation.
Yeah, still a lot of gray there. And I think May 24th is first day of OTAs, right around in there. That's probably going to be the line in the next line in the sand.
I agree. Last piece, and kind of circle back to the front office news. Apparently, according to Jeff Mosher, who covers the Philadelphia Eagles, Brandon Hunt is expected to interview for a high-ranking, unspecified front office position for the Eagles. And so, interesting note there. Brandon Hunt, obviously in contention to be the Steelers GM. He interviewed for the Raiders GM job earlier this year. That went to Dave Ziegler. Now he's looking for not a GM job, but apparently some high-ranking position with the Eagles.
Yeah, that's interesting, and obviously comes into play with the Steelers' search for their own general manager at this point. Another thing that you brought up real quick, do you think Art Rooney will tell the new general manager kind of what his speaking schedule will be? In other words, I use that tell and say, kind of that directive loosely, but would you expect the new general manager to only be kind of seen and heard from after the season is over and only during the pre-draft process kind of, because look, once the season gets over with Kevin Colbert's out on the scouting trail and obviously doesn't hold press conferences or anything along those lines. Is that the way you expect the role of the new general manager to be?
I do. I mean, who knows? There'll be so much change there. You can't guarantee anything. I don't think Rooney would tell him. I think it just kind of understood that the GM is less
I'd tell
seen.
him.
You tell him? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine it'll be a similar thing where you're not going to be hearing from the new GM weekly. You'll hear from him, obviously, when he gets introduced and have that first press conference. You hear from him probably during a random third preseason game on KDKA, and you'll hear from him after the season.
And the reason I say that, too, because look, his job at buying the groceries and all like that's done. All right. So the last thing you need him doing is answering questions on a microphone in the season, because then you set up the next time Tomlin's on the mic. Then you end up with the he said she. Well, Kevin Colbert said, you're throwing quotes by what somebody else said, and I've never liked that kind of dynamic. I love the dynamic that the Steelers have, and especially with Rooney too. Now I do wish they'd let their position coaches, the Steelers let their position coaches speak a little bit more in season, but I understand why they don't.
Well, they used to. And then we kind of ruined that. So, sorry.
Yeah. I don't mind that. The coordinators are obviously going to have their day, but the position coaches, I understand why they don't speak now or as much as they used to. But
are there GMs that speak weekly? I mean, aside from Jerry, which is a whole nother.
I don't have a running spreadsheet of it, so I can't answer that. But okay. I think one interview is too many.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't expect to hear from the GM much in season because A, they're busy, they're on the scouting trail as you mentioned, and B, it's just probably not what the Steelers are going to do.
Right. I mean, I don't know how you feel about Jerry Jones speaking every week for the Cowboys. I think that's the most ridiculous thing ever, because it turns around. You get the he said, she said whenever they had coaches answering questions, and it feels like you're always walking underneath a set of quotes. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
There. And I've always thought that Jerry Jones does an awful job as, leading the Cowboys.
He also holds up their draft board on an annual basis, which seems like a terrible idea. But again, Jerry's an exception that's hard to compare anything else to. And certainly I would not expect Pittsburgh's GM to follow suit there. Last thing on Hunt, and again, we're kind of reading the tea leaves a little bit, but if Hunt's interviewing for an Eagles job that isn't even the GM job, does that mean maybe he thinks he's not going to get the Steelers job? Like, that was kind of a thought that I've had. I'm sure others have had as well.
I don't know. I mean, if he doesn't know for sure, I certainly would want to keep interviewing. There are going to be a couple people out the door, I think, if Hunt and or Khan don't get this job.
I think you're right.
There's going to be some shakeup. That's why I asked about maybe some of these scouts too. Are you going to have is the whole scouting department going to get shook up as a byproduct of this? I don't know.
Sure.
I mean, we're not used to talking about this. We've never had to talk about this stuff even on the history of the whole podcast. I mean, so this is foreign to us. So you asked my opinion on do I think does this mean I'm not used to having to read this brand of tea leaves?
Yeah, I mean, the Steelers scouting staff, I mean, everyone talks about the continuity of the Rooneys and Colbert and Tomlin. How about the continuity of the scouting staff? These guys have all been here at least 5+ years, except for like an intern or two. Phil Kreidler, who's director of college scouting, has been there since the 90s. I mean, he has been there for longer than Colbert or Tomlin has been there. And so these guys have worked together. I think it's one reason why the Steelers draft well and say, for example, draft receivers so well, because it's the same scouts watching and evaluating these guys year after year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. It's the same dudes. And so you just get that really consistent eye towards these guys because it's just the same people doing the job over and over again and getting better.
I mean, they feel like family to me and you.
Me too, which probably is a little creepy, but that's who we are. We accept it.
Right. I mean, we pick these guys out. We feel like they should know us as much as well as we know them. I mean, we know what they wear sometimes on certain trips. I mean, it's crazy, but we'll get used to a new set if that's what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that's all kind of the big news. I would do talk about some other things on the other side, but now we are going to be joined by Tom Mead and Andrew Shaver to talk about draft and some of the things they've worked on as well. So we'll take a pause and come back with Tom and Andrew. And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. As we said a moment ago, we are joined by two more Steelers Depot contributors, Tom Mead and Andrew Shaver. You guys have heard from Tom many times before. He did excellent work leading up to this year's draft. Tom, how you doing?
Good, Alex. Happy to be back with you guys. It's always a good time.
Glad you're here with us. And a new face, relatively new. You've probably seen some of his articles by now. First time on the podcast, Andrew Shaver. You can be sure to follow him on Twitter at ashaver13. Andrew, how you doing? Thanks for being on. Just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, if you could.
Yeah, thanks as well for bringing me on. Kind of excited here, nervous in the same moment, but yeah, background in terms of football and Steelers fan. I've been a Steelers fan pretty much all my life. Background with a lot of, statistical, data analysis work. Been a contributor with Pro Football Focus for going on 5 years now. So just have a lot of background in terms of, getting, breaking down film and, looking at all the data, matching that up to see how it, tells a story. Just someone who loves great teamwork. So that's what attracts me to Steelers Depot, and glad to be aboard.
Yeah, glad to have you. You've done fantastic work. Be sure to check out his study today on Steelers Depot regarding the Steelers inside zone run game, comparing the increase in inside runs this past year and where Najee Harris and potentially some of the undrafted running backs like Mateo Durant and Jalen Warren fit in. So, guys,
real quick, I want to toss Andrew deep into the pool here. It brings up the Pro Football Focus background with them, and I am a I've gone on record several times saying that I absolutely love what Pro Football Focus does, much to the chagrin of a lot of our listeners and our readers and all. Now, do I think they get some things wrong sometimes when it comes to the grading element of things? Obviously, and how can you not? I don't think, because it being such a subjective kind of element of what they do. But man, the statistical, the stuff that these guys chart, and Tom can definitely relate to this because Tom charts our offense, our Steelers offense week in and week out, and obviously Alex, you do the defense and all as well too. So Andrew, how do you answer the the pushback from, not only Steelers fans, but football fans in general, with all Pro Football Focus sucks? What's your best kind of rebuttal to such a statement?
Yeah, I mean, there are the critics out there for sure. In my time with Pro Football Focus, I ran a couple of different social media accounts, and, there's, fans within a particular fan base will still, be optimistic, or maybe question as to whether, well, that doesn't sound right, or that can't be right. But I mean, just the one thing that I can, always claim is, everything is consistent. The grading is consistent. The breakdowns are consistent. I mean, there's no bias. I mean, it's just all black and white. So the results that, the end results as far as anything statistical or grades or just that, I mean, they're black and white. I mean, that's just all there is to it. So, and it agrees with somebody's, thoughts, or, somebody's narrative, like player X is good at this, or player, Z is not good at this. But, at the end of the day, the grades are as such, the data is as such, and, that's just what everybody has to live with.
Do they kind of double and triple grade things, don't they, or no?
Oh yeah.
I mean, can you give us a little bit of an insight into the kind of the process of how maybe a game is broken down by them?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's just not one set of eyes. I mean, you're talking about dozens of eyes who will see and, participate in all these different processes. So, I mean, just, the way like, quarterback grading and, charting goes, I mean, it's pretty extensive. I mean, and you have like former players who, are involved with that. I mean, Bruce Gronkowski, for one, to mention, I mean, he's had a huge role in that. I mean, there's countless other former players at different levels, who are involved as well. So, I mean, it's, you get that, yeah, well, what do these guys know? They're just sitting behind spreadsheets and such. But you've got true, students of the game, players, former players, I should say, former coaches as well. So, I mean, there's just a lot of eyes, a lot of minds, that are involved.
Okay. Alex, carry on.
And for a lot of fans, it comes down to, if PFF says nice things about your team, they love you. And if they don't, then they get mad at you. And so that's just kind of the natural reaction of how things go. So appreciate the work that PFF does, and certainly what you've done for them and what you've done for us, Andrew. Guys, let's dive into the conversation here about Pittsburgh's draft class with their first-round pick, Kenny Pickett. Dave, I think you had recently posted the 2020 big-time throws that Kenny Pickett had made. So I'll kind of let you lead this conversation here and get Andrew's and Tom's thoughts on Pickett and some of the studies that you've done. What have been your takeaways, Dave, of some of those big-time throw cut-ups from the past two seasons?
Yeah, obviously now at this point, I have contextualized both the 2021 that big-time throws that you and I talked about the other day. I think it was 27, I think, in total there, and now have done the 2020 big time throws, and there's obviously just 10 of those 2020 heavily impacted by the pandemic and all like that. Really didn't find too terribly much of an overall distance or difference when looking at the 2000. Now I'm obviously going backwards here, in time from 2021 to 2020, but I think just from a breakdown statistically, with the elements like the area of field that he threw to, whether or not he was in shotgun or under center, the air yard distances, that kind of element, and then matching it up with what my eyeballs actually saw on tape, I really didn't see a lot different there, other than 2021 obviously having 17 more of those kind of throws with him. Now, I think overall, once again, we're getting back. Now, one thing too that I should put in here is, man, that throw against Georgia Tech, the last one on the list down the right sideline, man, you want to talk about a ball being dropped in the bucket. Go look at that play. And I have all these linked in the contextualization table for Kenny Pickett here. That was a super nice deep ball down the right side. I think it had 30 total air yards on it. The defensive back just missed getting a hand on that ball. That throw really kind of stuck out to me for some reason, and quite honestly, I mean that might have been one of his better throws in his final 2 seasons there. When you look at big time throws, now one throw that did not make the list, I was going through trying to watch all the 2020 tape on Kenny Pickett yesterday. There was one of the throws against, who was it? Against North Carolina State there, had a back shoulder throw, I think just outside of the red zone in the first half sometime there, that was originally ruled a touchdown, but then overturned after the receiver caught it at the 1. I was wondering why that throw didn't make it as a big time throw, and I know Andrew doesn't have the answer to that, maybe, but that was another one of those throws that really caught my eye, even though it's not included in the big time throws, as being a kind of a wow throw, if you will. Once again, the main takeaway with him, he's throwing to all areas of the football field, at least in this quote unquote big time throw section area that I'm breaking down with him. Most of these throws are coming out of shotgun, a handful of them out of pistol. We did see one last season against Austin P with him under center, and then play action on top of that for a big time throw. But most of the other ones, I think, in fact, all the other ones, I think, have been either out of shotgun or pistol. Nothing else really has kind of stuck out other than the percentage of his big time throws. One of the big takeaways that Alex and I had the other day there was, and we spent some time on the overall percentage of big time throws. His 2.8% big time throw rate in 2020 was way down there. Not only was it down there in overall in FBS, but in ACC ranking as well. So I think that's just one of the things that why aren't we seeing more of these big time throws from him? So that would be one of the huge takeaways so far through 2021, 2020.
Dave, are most of these throws coming from the pocket, or is he working outside on some of these as well?
Yeah, most of them are obviously in pocket out of shotgun. There are a couple. Look, there's a couple of nice throws, or not a couple of nice kind of extended plays, if you will. The play against Tennessee there, where he had to go off script, was one of them. I think one of the other ones that stuck out. Now these are only what are classified by PFF as big time throws. But there was another one, I think, against Miami as well, too, in 2021, where him working out off script, kind of avoiding a rush and all like that. But for the most part, these and it's important to go over what PFF qualifies as a big time throw. A big time throw is on the highest end of both difficulty and value. And as they say, while the value is easy to see statistically, the difficulty has to do more with the passes that have a lower completion percentage the further the football is thrown down the field. So therefore, the big time throw is best described as a pass with excellent ball location and timing, and generally thrown further down the field and into a tighter window.
Yeah, I think accuracy is a good part of his game. His pocket movement and reading the rush around him is something I think he needs to improve on. That may help those big time throws. You guys talked the other day about, I think Jonathan brought up comparing him to Burrow with his arm strength. I think he should try and copy Burrow with his pocket presence, the way he keeps both hands on the ball and steps up and moves around there. I think that would be a good thing to emulate that could help him along the way.
I tell you, another thing, the big, shame on us. Kevin Colbert tried to tell us which way he was going to go with this. we pride ourselves on reading the tea leaves, and Kevin Colbert, other than just saying the name Kenny Pickett, pretty much told us this was going to happen. But
he also literally said Kenny Pickett during the process too. Like, he did talk about him specifically sometimes. So we try to look at this thing too damn deep sometimes. It was someone that knows though felt like can it be that obvious? And it was.
Yeah, and Andrew was fortunate enough to get me some adjusted completion percentage numbers, and adjusted completion percentage numbers, takes into effect the drops, because as we've talked these last couple of days here, that especially the quarterback coach that Kenny Pickett has, saying, man, Pitt led the country in drops for these couple of years, and all these drops and all. And I think when you look at his overall adjusted completion percentage, especially from 2021, where he made that kind of that jump in his play there, 78.8% adjusted completion percentage on all throws for Kenny Pickett in 2021. And when you stack that up against Carson Strong, Bailey Zappi, Matt Corral, Desmond Ridder, Sam Howell, and Malik Willis, it's tops, all right? And Malik Willis is last in that at 70.1%, and then you have Kenny Pickett at 78.8%. And you probably say, okay, Dave, well, the big time percentage throws is down though. So give me something to feed off of other than that. And if you look at the adjusted completion percentage, now this is 2021 alone, for Kenny Pickett, it was 56.8, and only one other quarterback of Strong, Zappi, Corral, Ridder, Howell, and Willis had a higher adjusted completion percentage on deep balls, and by deep balls we're talking 20 or more air yards past the line of scrimmage, than Kenny Pickett did, and that was Bailey Zappi out of Western Kentucky. So that's some encouraging, that's some data right there that Kevin Colbert pretty much handed us that we ignored.
Andrew, I'm just curious, because I actually don't really know your thoughts on the selection. Whatever hat you want to put on here, whether that's the analytical hat or just your overall, tape watching hat, how do you feel about the Kenny Pickett pick? Was that the right selection for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, accuracy is key. Especially if you can do it downfield, past the sticks, past that 10-yard mark. So, that makes a ton of sense. I'll be honest. I really didn't truly think, unless the Steelers traded up, they'd even have a chance at some of these QBs. My mock draft is, further evidence how wrong I was on that. But, yeah, as far as the pick goes, it feels like it's the right one.
And I think the biggest thing that PFF knocked Pickett for, I believe they had as a number 4 quarterback in this class, as did I, was he'll have to speed things up. I think they said Pickett, snap to throw was 3.1 plus seconds, the second longest. So the top quarterback's only ahead of Malik Willis, who of course ran around so much that kind of skewed the number a little bit. So is that something that you would agree with, that Pickett has to probably work a little bit faster at the NFL level?
Yeah, he's well over 3 seconds. You see, in the NFL, you're not going to have that, amount of time. That's
sure.
Just the bottom line as far as that goes. So yeah, but he was afforded that. I think his athletic ability lends to that a little bit as well.
Right.
So, that's also a good trait. But yeah, that's, I'm sure, something they're going to work with him in terms of, just getting that first read or even the next reads processed and to get rid of it.
Tom, it's almost become a little tired to ask the question, but I do want to get your thoughts on it. What do you see as the ceiling for Kenny Pickett? What's a best case scenario? Is there a concern there that even his best puts you in that, some will say the Kirk Cousins category of the purgatory of a good quarterback, but not a great one that's going to hang with the top guys? What do you see as a best case for Kenny Pickett?
Well, obviously a lot of that's going to depend on the system they put him in. If he can work in this system correctly, he's got the guys around him to make plays. And if the offensive line obviously needs to be able to block better than they have in the past couple years, I think he could probably be in that middle rung, maybe like Derek Carr, somewhere that level. I think they obviously had their pick of the litter, so they made the choice they wanted, which is great news. But I'm not sure. I think he has a high floor and a lower ceiling than some of the other guys. But that consistency, like Andrew was saying, with the accuracy, that's a huge thing for the offense. So it's somewhere in that Derek Carr range. I think he can get up to.
Is that good enough in your mind to make Pittsburgh competitive, like Super Bowl competitive again?
Absolutely, because Pittsburgh they're gonna try and build this team off of the running game and the defense, which is how they've won in the past. So they're gonna need a guy in there who's gonna not make mistakes, who's gonna be accurate with the ball, not turn it over, and if he hands it off, we should be fine.
Dave, any final questions about Pickett you wanted to ask these guys?
Yeah, where do both of them come in on the gap right now, as is on what is today, May the 6th? Where is the gap between Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett at this point? And do either of you see Mason Rudolph at all factoring into this, or is Mason Rudolph going to be wearing a different uniform come week 1 of the season here?
For me, I don't think the gap is that big, but I'm going to give it a little more room than maybe most, because just on the experience of being around the NFL a couple of years, I think Trubisky's going to have a slight advantage. Talent-wise, Trubisky, we have to remember, I think he only started 1 year coming out of college, right? So he didn't have a ton of experience coming in. Chicago didn't use him in the correct type of offense. He seemed to be a bit rejuvenated, at least from what I've read in Buffalo. So that's a good sign. And I think he'll definitely have the advantage. I think it's going to be a battle, though, because if you're taking a 24-year-old quarterback in the first round, you're expecting to play quickly. As far as Rudolph goes, I think he should be a bit worried, and he may end up somewhere, by the end of training camp.
Okay.
I hope he's renting. Andrew, who do you expect this team to start week 1? I know that's a difficult question for me to ask you, and I don't know who it's going to be, but what is your inclination?
And what do you think about the gap between Trubisky and Pickett?
Yeah, I mean, as far as starting week 1, I honestly do not know. With the Kentucky Derby in mind, right now, at this point in time, I think it's an even horse race between those two. How it turns out once they hit the front stretch, once it's training camp and preseason, somebody's obviously going to separate themselves. Is it going to be Trubisky because of experience at the NFL level? Maybe. Is it Kenny Pickett because he's the shiny new toy? I don't know. Mason Rudolph, just to keep with the horse racing analogy, I don't know. It seems like he's had his opportunities, but if you're looking like the horse racing guide, you may have some notes by him saying he stumbled out of the gate a little bit on occasion. So I don't know if he's truly going to be within that race. It most likely will be just Trubisky and Pickett.
So the glue factory.
I was thinking that, and I wasn't going to say it because we're going to get a hate mail for that.
I know all of you were thinking that, and I'm the only one with the guts to say it. But what about the deep ball aspect of Pickett? The actual stats aside, what do you think about the visible aspect of the Kenny Pickett deep throw? Both of you, and then we'll wrap up on Kenny Pickett.
I think he's more than capable. Steelers now have 4 guys over 6'3", so they've got, they've put some big bodies out there to be able to go up and go over the DBs. His placement, his accuracy is good. I don't have an issue with it because it's a couple throws a game you're thinking, and they haven't been very successful on it the past couple years, so any improvement's going to be an improvement.
Yeah, to me, I think Pickett throws a pretty good deep ball. I mean, it just looks pretty. I mean, and all the times you've watched Trubisky over the years, I mean, he just seems like he's more, just more shallow, more intermediate in terms of his accuracy and just his overall play. I mean, you oftentimes see him, start to roll out, one way or the other, and then you can, hit somebody. It just always seems like when you watch him in Chicago, there was not many times where he's hitting those deep passes, and sometimes Allen Robinson comes to mind, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a welcome sight, I think, for Steeler games to actually see some downfield passing again. So that's just something to be determined.
When you think of Kenny Pickett, and what if you for listeners that didn't have a lot of time, Andrew, if you were to say go watch this one game from 2021 on Kenny Pickett, what game would you recommend them go watch?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a good recommendation. Just because, I just don't know. I don't know how to get people's hopes up, or just don't want to get somebody's hopes up. So I really don't have like a great game to like mention or anything along those lines.
I was just going to say quickly, I think Pickett from the pocket in terms of arm strength and downfield arm talent reminds me of Mason Rudolph. And I mean that in a positive way, because I think Rudolph actually shows really good placement, and their arm strength, I think, is fairly similar. But as Andrew mentioned, Pickett's ability to make plays outside the pocket, throw on the run. He made so many plays rolling to his right this past year, and being able to fire the ball downfield. That's certainly going to be an upgrade over Mason Rudolph. I think it's about the level I would expect from his deep ball this year. But good discussion overall on Kenny Pickett. I want to move to day two, and really the receivers taken in this class: George Pickens in the second round, Calvin Austin in the fourth round. To me, that was my favorite aspect of the Steelers draft. Tom, I'll start with you. Just your thoughts on the Pickens and Austin selections and how they can help Pittsburgh in year number one.
Well, okay, so Pickens seems like the type of guy that they like to draft every few years or so, right? The big, athletic guy who can go downfield. He seems a little bit different than maybe like Claypool and what's the other guy? I can't think of his name.
Bryant
got traded away. Yeah, Bryant. I think I think he's a much better route runner. He's gonna make it so they can't double team Johnson all the time, which is gonna be excellent for him. I'd like to see him add a little bit of strength. He's at 6'3" and only 195. He seems a little bit light, but he's so good at the contested catch. He's gonna give the offense that that trust where the quarterback can just throw it up and go get it. As far as Austin goes, he brings speed, which was severely lacking from this team. He's an undersized player, and he's obviously going to bring up thoughts of Dree Archer and Chris Rainey and even Willie Reed, if you want to go back that far. And so my concern is not for Austin, but for the offense and how they use him. They obviously weren't able to figure it out with those other guys. Now, Austin, I believe, is a better player. And I think he's more of a playmaker than those guys were. So I think that's going to be beneficial. And while I was listening to you guys on the podcast the other day, talking about how to use him because he played inside and outside, it popped in my head that I'd love to see him in 10 personnel and put him in the backfield with 22 and make the linebackers and safety try and cover both of those guys out of the backfield. The speed element is huge. It's a good add. He was an unexpected player we didn't see contact with him, but it was something that's definitely needed. So it's going to be a help if used right.
Sure. I love the idea of putting him in the backfield. I think Canada will be smart to utilize that speed and motions and get him out in space. Andrew, your thoughts again on Pickens and Austin?
Yeah, with Pickens, I mean, he was somebody I really liked. I mean, I echo a lot of the other, just summaries in terms of like, this guy's a first round talent. I mean, just kind of going back to like the mock draft I posted, that was somebody I seriously considered at number 20, just because it's like, this guy is should be in the conversation with the other top tier wide receivers, hover around that, 10 to 15, pick, conversation. So, I mean, he's somebody I think who's going to come in, make an immediate impact. I get the AJ Green comparisons just because they both went to Georgia. Haven't seen AJ play in person during college several times. I don't think they're the same player. I think George Pickens offers more of like that, like hand-to-hand combat and just that more just, quick body control, if that makes sense, kind of like a DeAndre Hopkins. Andre Green or AJ Green, it just seems like a lot of times, the ball gets to him rather than, George Pickens is somebody who stabs it out of the air. He does double catch it a lot. You kind of see that every so often, like with even though Hopkins has the big hands, you may see that a little bit. Adam Thielen comes to mind a lot as well. I mean, Thielen, receiver. So you see Pickens line up in that role a lot as well. So that's who he kind of reminds me of. I think that's kind of who he could be. Austin, I think he's a fun player. He's obviously, drawing a lot of the, former Steelers draft pick comparisons, but he doesn't look like somebody who's, just, 5'8". His arms are so long that he reaches out and catches the ball. Just the study I did in terms of like, his route tree, somebody in the comments even brought up and asked like, why is he dropping so much on widescreen? So I went back and looked at a few of them and, there's the one where he just stumbles. He, for whatever reason, you got the inside receiver that's blocking. So he trips over him, doesn't, catch it cleanly. Another time it's an RPO. He sees the quarterback running towards the line of scrimmage and all of a sudden it's like a last ditch effort where he throws it to him. And he's not ready for it. And then you get this other one where, he just simply looks up the field. So I think his hands are pretty reliable, even on like downfield routes. He should add a new element. I mean, you have to wonder if he's going to be a guy who's going to get those jet sweeps now, rather than, like the Chase Claypool. I mean, in college, Claypool didn't really have any rushes or, didn't have any of like those, sweeps that you see, and he's kind of done these past couple of years. So maybe seeing another guy like Austin and his speed and ability to get to the outside should be exciting.
Talk about Pickens' route tree real quick, Andrew, please.
Yeah, so he obviously a lot of hitch routes, a lot of go routes. That's his two top targeted routes. Not many drops. The drops did come on, hitches, So, I'd say he has reliable hands in that matter, and he runs a lot of different routes. Georgia's offense, is kind of top heavy with just, a few, handful of different routes. So, that's why you've seen, those routes on that study I did, him being his most targeted ones. But yeah, he runs some neat routes. That's some clean routes, and, he gets by, he gets even. So yeah, I think when I say he's going to have an immediate impact, I think that's where he has like those routes down.
Okay.
Who do you guys think will be the most productive rookie in 2022? And productive, I guess, is a bit of a subjective term, but overall, who will have the greatest impact? And Tom, I'll start by asking you.
Oh, that's a good question. Greatest impact.
Because you got to consider, is Pickett going to start? Is he not going to start halfway through? And Pickens and Austin, this thing it has some layers to it.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Pickens. That quarterback that wide receiver room was empty until they just added to it. So he's got a chance to come in and play from day one and be one of those three receivers on the field. Like I said before, he's going to be able to make it so they can't double team Deontay. So I think he's going to have the most opportunities. Unless Pickett wins the job. But I think they'll start with Trubisky first. But I think Pickens has the best opportunity.
Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Pickens for sure, unless Pickett's, a starter early on. Then obviously I think it'll be him.
I'm going to go on a limb and Pickett. Obviously, what happens with him is going to determine a lot if he wins the job. I'll say Calvin Austin, just because his team needs a more defined slot receiver. And Pickens, well, I think the talent's great, and I'm happy with the pick overall. The guy is 21 and basically barely played football last year. So I wonder how much rust is going to be and how much of a learning curve and a jump that's going to be for him to the NFL level. Austin, the senior, someone with just more experience overall. I wonder if he'll have an easier time transitioning initially than George Pickens does.
I'm gonna go Pickett because okay. I just got a feeling that I don't feel like this gap's that big between him and Mitch Trubisky, and Trubisky's obviously got the more experience, NFL experience at this level, but I'm not buying that gap's that big, and should Pickett not be the week 1 starter. Trubisky's going to have you start off 1-3 or God forbid 0-3 or something like that. Pickett's going to be in there for the rest of the way there, and so because of that, I think he's going to be a slam dunk to win the Rookie of the Year, Steelers Rookie of the Year award, and potentially, obviously depending on how he plays, be in the running for AP Offensive Player of the Year award. Now, obviously, he'd have to play well to be considered that. But I think the single one player that's going to have the most impact. And look, I think George Pickens can hit the field early along with Austin there. But the quarterback can't get him the ball. That's going to be a lot of it. And I kind of wonder too. Keep going back to Martavis Bryant. His rookie season. And it might be who was the offensive coordinator there? Todd was Todd in town at that time? I think he was.
I think so.
Why the hell did it take so long to get Martavis on the field? I think he had a little bit of an injury issue early on there or whatnot. I kind of wonder if they might just kind of not full throttle Pickens into this thing right away there. In other words, ease them in the first 3 or 4 games with like 8 snaps a game, something like that. And that might hurt his overall impact there. And I think for some degree, Austin's not going to be an every 11 personnel snap right out of the chute either. I think that's what they hope he becomes. But I think I think both will get used right out of the chute, probably not to the level or the degree that most are maybe hoping. And I think Pickett might even, have a chance to be kind of that week 1 starter there. So that's why I would go with Pickett there.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I agree. I don't think the talent gap between Trubisky and Pickett's large. And obviously Pickett could very easily win this job or get it early. And if he does, he'll certainly have the biggest statistical impact. I just kind of wanted to give a different answer there with Calvin Austin. Wanted to ask you guys briefly about third round pick DeMarvin Leal, a guy we haven't talked about quite as much in comparison to the receivers and, of course, the quarterback in round number 1. Tom, I'll start with you. That Leal's the guy I'm struggling with, just trying to figure out who he is and where he fits and just how this is going to work with DeMarvin Leal.
I'm right there with you. They usually don't go with an undersized guy who's the pass rusher more than the run defender. Mm-hmm. Asking him to add on, he's probably going to have to add 15, 20 pounds to be an everyday player at some point. My first initial thought when they drafted him in the 3rd round was Tuitt's not coming back. So they wanted to get somebody in there right away to start learning. So that's, right. I hope that's not the case, but I felt the same way, just to go on record. I felt the same way, Tom. Go ahead. Yeah. Asking a guy to put on weight and teaching him how to run defend more effectively it's kind of asking a lot. And, if pass rushing is his best thing right now, he's not going to get a ton of snaps, but behind the guys they have now, I think, what's the name? Loudermilk last year, maybe we got 8 to 12 snaps, maybe a game over the course of the season. And, I don't even see that many for him. So this pick was a bit puzzling for me, but, it's somebody they focused on and somebody they wanted. So I have to trust them that they're going to be able to get this fixed.
It was, I believe, the only pro day Carl Dunbar attended, so they really had an eye on those A&M guys. Andrew, do you share that concern, or are you more optimistic about Leal's impact?
Yeah, I kind of scratched my head to see exactly, what his strength is going to be. When watching him a little more closely ever since he was drafted, you look at him and you're thinking he could be bigger, or he doesn't play very big. Now, that might be because he had a teammate there, that Michael Clemens, who was an absolute monster. He was 6'7", drafted by the Jets this year. But there's just times where you're watching Leal play, and it's like, well, you'd like to see a little bit more. You just want to see him play a little bit bigger. Maybe because he has that, the pedigree in terms of like being the big 5-star recruit and whatnot. But it seemed like he did all of his, work on early downs. When you're watching, A&M film, you see Tyree Johnson, kind of, which is, to his credit, you kind of see him showing up on third down more than you would Leal. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what their, expectations are, if they want him to be like that run stopper, if they expect him to be like this pass rusher, but I think it's another one to be determined.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Is it like Javon Hargrave, but obviously the body type's different, and Leal's not as strong? Is it they want him to be more of a two at Hayward? I'm just trying to envision the type of guy they want Leal to be, and I'm just struggling with that a little bit. But yeah, he's only 21, and A&M system did kind of ask him to do more different things, and with issues with his weight, and so I don't know. I mean, I think he's going to take some time to develop at least.
I really thought Jaden Peavy was going to be the guy that they're going to draft out of there in the 6th or 7th round because of 6'5", 1'8", 321. 6'5" and 3/8 and 308. Long arms at 35.5, big hands 10.5 inches there. Now he's not as twitchy as Leal is there, but I really thought that might be more of the way that they're going to go there. And I think Kevin Colbert in one of the interviews yesterday, right, or day before, reiterated once again that this is a guy that's going to have to put on some weight. They view him more as a defensive end, and then a guy that could play inside in the sub package there. But he's got to put on a little bit of weight, I think, first, and he's got to get a little bit more refined, at least from a run blocking standpoint, before he does that. And I'm with Tom in the aspect of I don't know how you kind of, barring injury, how are you going to carve out some early season snaps for him, especially if Tuitt does return and you wind up keeping a whopping 7 defensive linemen on this 53-man roster, because you're not going to address all those guys on a weekly basis. So Leal could be a guy, even if they keep 6 in total, that might be inactive quite a bit, at least at the start of the season, barring injuries.
I will say his motor runs hot. This guy plays with great effort, and that's so important in Pittsburgh. You see what Cam Hayward's done. You see what Stephon Tuitt's done whenever he's been available. You saw Loudermilk learning about that stuff last year. This guy will chase the football, and he's a decent athlete overall. And so, that's at least a good place for a young guy that needs some work to start. This guy's going to play hard. I do want to wrap up the actual draft picks by talking about the final 3: Connor Hayward, Mark Robinson, Chris Oladokun. Andrew, I'll start with you. Just your overall thoughts on those 3 selections. Did you like those 3 picks? Would you have gone a different direction?
I got the opportunity to look at Mark Robinson more closely during the draft profile process, and he's very intriguing. I mean, for somebody who's played that, position, off the ball linebacker for just 1 season at the collegiate level, I mean, he has some things figured out. It's pretty obvious coverage wise. There's a lot to, improve upon, but I mean, his instincts in terms of like against the run and, diagnosing and then just getting in there and putting a hat and shoulder on somebody is, that I thought was impressive at times. One game in particular against Tennessee, he played a lot of snaps and you could tell he was just wearing out Tennessee. I mean, just the whole game, and it was statistically his best game. So he was a fun one to watch. Yeah, you keep seeing the name Connor Hayward throughout the years because, obviously, the Cam Hayward connection. So, I mean, you get to see highlights and he catches your eye throughout the years. Haven't really dug very deep into him yet. And I don't really know much about the quarterback other than just a few things in terms of just, this past week since they picked him. So yeah, I'd say the most intriguing among those is Mark Robinson. Be interested to see if he makes the 53 or, how that, linebacker room shakes out.
Terrell Austin talked about Robinson's background as a running back helps him as a linebacker diagnose, run schemes and blocking schemes and things like that. Tom, which day 3 pick, Austin aside, is the most intriguing to you?
Well, I'm going to go with Connor Hayward. And I'll start by saying, if you give me 22 Connor Haywards, I can compete with anybody in the league. Because if you ask him to play nose tackle or kick field goals or play offensive guard, he'll do it. That's the type of football player he is, and I love that about him. Again, he's another one of those pieces where if they use him like they used him in college, they used him on screens, they used him on running plays. They got very creative with him. But my question is, are they going to keep him and Watt? Because basically they're going to have the same role, that fullback special team player. And while fullback isn't used all that much on the offense, Watt is a very good special teamer. So if you get rid of him, you're going to have to make sure Hayward's going to be able to participate and contribute with plays on special teams. Now, your way too early roster prediction, I think, had both of them on there, which would be very interesting to see how they would do that. But I'm not sure if one way or the other, if there's a huge improvement to the team. But I think Connor Hayward is a blue collar football player, and I'll take that on my team any day.
I agree. I think he is that just definition of a football player. I put the 2 fullbacks on and did not put a third tight end on. So that's kind of the way that I maneuvered it. Pittsburgh did have 2 fullbacks back when with Rosie Nix and Will Johnson, when Nix kind of had that great camp and blocked that punt against Carolina. And they had 2 for, I think, most of the season, if not the entire season, as Nix's role expanded over the year. Andrew, on a scale of 1 to 1, 1 being not surprised, 1 being not surprised, how not surprised were you by this team drafting Connor Hayward?
not surprised one bit, I guess.
Do you like the fit? Do you think this guy can find a path?
Tell him what he's won, Alex.
Some steak knives, yeah.
No, I mean, I think he's going to have a lot of impact on special teams. I think you can pretty much line him up in almost all teams. At different positions even. And just like as Tom was mentioning, you give him 22 of those guys, you can, field a team that's going to compete at all positions. And that does seem like the kid he is. I think Danny Smith going to have some interesting input through camp and such in terms of who he's going to pound the table for, in terms of, do you keep a guy like, Derek Watt and, Hayward and all these other guys, Mark Robinson in that same conversation, because they've played on, both sides of the ball or, lined up at different positions. So that'll be interesting, but I think Hayward will have an impact.
I almost wonder if they can find a way to upgrade this backup running back position. And I'm a firm believer. This was my terrible take yesterday. Look, this team's not done. We all agree this team's not done. There's going to be 2 or 3 more people brought in from the outside that end up making this 53-man roster at a minimum, too. I don't think I'm going to get any pushback from any of you on that, because that's just the trend that this team has. If one of those guys is a more an upgraded version, and maybe they consider Benny Snell that guy. I kind of wonder if they do consider Benny Snell that guy at this point. But if they can find a more complementary backup with experience to Najee Harris in between now and week 1, I almost wonder, why couldn't Connor Hayward be that number 3 running back on game days, along with having Derek Watt on the roster, and then you kind of plug in two holes with one player there, and then, oh yeah, you're going to get the special teams value with them. So that's kind of where my thought is on this, because if you, what does a number 3 running back look to this team, and what has a number 3 running back looked like to this team over the years? Balaj, I think specifically last year, I mean, that guy, they just wanted to make sure they had somebody that had some sense of experience of carrying the football out of the backfield. But on the same thing, in the same breath, they wanted to make sure they could get him on the field for some special teams. Well, Connor Hayward can do all that for you and a little bit more, because you can actually use him reliably out of the backfield as a pass catcher and line him up outside and H back him and all those things on top of it. So that's where I would push back if I was in defense of Alex having both Watt and Connor Hayward on the 53.
Make him a modern day Chris Fuamata-Mafa'ala.
Possibly. And look, I mean, he's even lighter than that. I think at 233 or whatnot. Look, you go back and watch that, and it's easy to do because they're only Pitt, and you're talking about Steeler fans here, or Steeler players here. You go back and look at some of that 2018 tape when Connor Hayward was getting the ball, and I think what was the game he carried it 20-something times again? Was that Northwestern that he had the 80-something yard?
Maryland.
Maryland. There's moments in there where you think maybe you're watching James Conner, a more heavier James Conner, like when he came out. And we all know the Steelers, conditioning program. And, I think a year from now, assuming he sticks, Connor Hayward will have a little bit different physique maybe than he does entering his rookie season here. So I just don't think it's out of the question to think that Connor Hayward could be, that's, I hate to keep using the cliche, the Swiss Army knife there, where you ask him to be the backup fullback, the third string running back, the number 3 tight end, and save yourself a roster spot to dedicate somewhere else.
I haven't thought of him as that third running back option, and I kind of like it now that you say that. So,
I mean, look. I mean, and look, it's nothing to get excited about. He does, he did have the 80-something yard run, but there's good hard run. I mean, he knows what he's doing with the ball in his hand. Now, he's obviously not athletically. He's sort of like Carlos Hyde meets Carlos Hyde NFL version meets James Conner college version.
Okay, that's interesting.
Minus the explosive plays that Conner had, because Conner had a crap load of explosive plays as a running back out of Pitt for whatever reason.
To me, there is a little bit of that Will Johnson vibe, because Johnson was a good athlete and he played on special teams. He didn't run the ball, that much, but he could catch and he could, I think maybe Hayward offers a little more offensive value, but there's some baseline similarities between a guy like that and Connor Hayward.
At worst, okay. Let's for those listening saying, "Oh man, you guys are out of your ever-loving mind." Ain't no way Connor Hayward makes this 53-man roster this year. Okay, he lands on the practice squad. All right, what's going to happen to Derek Watt past 2022? Realistically, this is it for him this year, more than likely. And if that's the case, then Connor Hayward becomes your new Derek Watt in 2023. And what's wrong with that?
Yeah, nothing. I think that works out well. A couple minutes left with you guys. Wanted to talk about some of the undrafted players as well. The 10 players signed after Saturday's draft. Tom, I know you've profiled a couple guys. I forget, you profiled who? You profiled Jake Dixon?
Jake Dixon and Donovan Jeter.
Okay, so Dixon, interesting story. Former volleyball player turned football player, local kid, Duquesne. What is Pittsburgh getting with Jake Dixon?
Yeah, Pittsburgh native. His mom played volleyball at Duquesne, and he originally committed to a school near Chicago to play volleyball that was a number 2 nationally ranked class, but he realized he missed football too much, so he came back to Duquesne. 6'5", 310. With only 32 and an 1/8 inch arms, which was a bit shocking. But he's a fluid mover. He's got, he slides well in his pass protection, keeps a half man. He got good change of direction. He's got very good mobility. He wasn't asked to do a whole ton of different types of run blocks. It was usually just a hinge, a combo, or a down block. He gets a little over aggressive on his run blocks, puts his head down and tries to drive through people and gets sidestepped. But he's a really intriguing athlete. I think a year or two with NFL coaching, he might have a chance to stick around and at least be a reserve lineman. He might have to kick inside because of the arm length, but I really liked his athleticism overall.
How did he look against TCU? Because it's not often you can turn on a Duquesne game and have it on your TV. And so to see them against a Power 5 team, how did he look?
There was an adjustment to the speed of the defense.
Sure.
He was confused on some twists and stunts early in the game. He would chase the penetrator and leave the outside open. But I saw he was better later in the season against dealing with that stuff. But the speed was an issue to him at first, but he kind of caught up to it a little bit. He wasn't spectacular by any means, but there's potential there.
Did he play volleyball at Lewis? I was trying to find stats to see if he actually played in a game. I could not find it, but I didn't know if I missed something. Do you know if he actually played for the volleyball team?
Yeah, I was looking myself and I couldn't find anything either. It just said he committed to Lewis University, so I don't think he ever went there.
They probably saw his short arms.
Dave,
yeah.
Come on.
They probably thought, man, we can't pay anybody to feed this guy,
Can't get the hands over the net.
I couldn't resist.
Yeah, I could only find that number on NFL Draft Scout, so I'm hoping it might have been a typo somehow, but I was like, when I saw 32 1/8, I'm like, at 6'5", he's got 32 1/8 inch arms. Oh my goodness! But he's got a good punch. He times his punch well, but yeah,
better.
Yeah, exactly.
All these poor guys catching strays today. Tom, give me the skinny on Donovan Jeter. Not a lot of stats on him in Michigan. I'm assuming he was kind of more run plugger and allow other guys to win.
Yeah, he was the rotational guy running with the second group mostly. 6'3", 310, 10.5 inch hands, 33 3/8 inch arms. Good size and length. They moved him up and down the line from the 0 to the 5 technique. As a pass rusher, there was nothing there. Now, they had Hutchinson and Ojabo, and I'm sure they had other guys on the second team as well that were pretty good. So maybe he was just asked to contain the rush, but he would do a shimmy, punch with his hands, and then try and get his hands up in passing lanes. I don't think he had any sacks in his career.
Oh, wow.
As a run defender, he's two gap. He's good. He's got the strength. He can stack. He can shed. He can make plays within his gaps. He's not going to do much outside the tackles. He'll chase. He's got a good motor, but he's not fast at all. He doesn't have the quickness to one gap, so he's basically a two gap defender, and that's it. With the depth the Steelers have, I think it'd be hard for him to make the team, but he's got the size to fit the position if they want to, see if they can build him into something.
Maybe he was asked to contain is one of those equivalents of maybe she didn't see my text message after all. One of those pretty lies we tell ourselves to try to make ourselves more comfortable with. He saw the text. Jeter can't get after the quarterback, but a run stuffer. I mean, that there's some value in that for sure. Andrew, your thoughts overall?
Can he be a 0, Tom? Can he be a 0 or a 1?
As a two gapper, yeah.
All right.
He can do that.
All right.
Andrew, your thoughts on the undrafted class? Any names that stuck out to you?
Yeah, I've kind of focused on the two halfbacks, Durant and Warren, just because of how they would fit, or maybe possibly what teams saw in them to want to sign them. Like you mentioned previously, I kind of did a deeper dive in terms of the inside zone, and that's just how the Pittsburgh last year they kind of relied heavily on it with Najee. Durant, a lot of experience inside zone, a lot last year. Warren has that experience as well. Warren also excels with outside zone. There's a lot of highlight plays that you'll see. The one game, Boise State, early on in the first quarter, I mean, he hits that one for, I want to say, like 75 yards. Two different running styles, really. When you watch Durant on those inside runs, tries to spin off a lot of tackles, and there's sometimes where you kind of wince because you're thinking, wow, this guy's just going to get leveled here by somebody here in the secondary or at the second level. But especially for his, size and frame, whereas Warren kind of looks like an anvil, or it's like teams are trying to tackle him and you just run it through there and there's not much to grab a hold of. So, yeah, I mean, they're, to me, almost two different kind of players. So once again, it would be interesting to see how they fit once training camp and preseason rolls around.
Do you have a favorite of the two?
Oh, at this moment, I kind of like Warren.
Do you really? Okay. Why?
Just because, like I said, I mean, watching him kind of get to the outside, and then also just because his target to tackle is there's not much there. I mean, a lot of forward lean, and it's hard to tackle guys that way to me. I mean, when it comes to pad level, you got to get underneath him somehow. Whereas Durant, his inside runs, I mean, he's up high. And like I said, he just has like this knack to try to like spin off tackles. And to me, that's going to be short-lived in some regard because he's really going to get hit hard, maybe even hurt. So, and I think that's going to like take away from his game a bit.
Sort of like Mendenhall, unnecessary spins at times.
Yeah, not to the degree not even to the quickness that Mendenhall possessed. I mean, there's some times where it's like, I don't want to say it's slow motion, but it's like slow developing. And that's kind of like, to me, like you hold your breath or you wince a little bit because you're thinking, oh my gosh, this guy's going to get hit. But at the same time, there might be guys in the college level that lay up because, you can get flagged for targeting and such. So it'll be interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, right now, if you're to put me on a spot, just one chair, two guys, Warren may be that, that running back. I don't know. I mean,
have you watched much of either as far as pass protection goes or any kind of blocking goes?
Just grade scouting, to be honest with you. I haven't really gotten into like truly watching them on film. I want to say Durant's the better pass pro, just in terms of like, grade scouting and such. But yeah, that's something I still have to look at.
Okay.
Last question for you guys, and we appreciate your time and your insight as always. Just your overall thoughts and feel on this class. Are you happy with what Pittsburgh did in the draft? You wish they would have done something differently in some regard? Just your overall 30,000-foot view. Tom, I'll start with you.
I think they got what they wanted, so I'm going to trust them and believe they're happy with what they got. But
are you happy?
That was Tom, not Dave, that said that.
Am I happy? No, I have a lot of questions that would have done things way differently.
What's the biggest thing or things you would have done differently?
Well, after the selection of the quarter, if you're going to stick with Pickett first, I can live with that because they got their choice of the quarterbacks and that's who they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
The second round with Pickens, you had Pierce and Moore right behind him. I could have gone with either of those guys and be happy as well. Leal, I think, was a reach, and they had plenty. There was maybe 30, 40 guys after that to select. Austin, again, it all depends on if they use him right. And the last two picks, I didn't like at all because I don't see them helping team anytime soon. So, again, they got what they wanted, so we should be happy.
Sure. Andrew, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm happy in the terms that, or just based on they didn't have to trade up to get somebody. That was like one of my number one fears was trading like draft capital to go get one of those quarterbacks because you truly never know how they're going to pan out. So them staying put and then getting what they deem as their guy, that I'm happy in that regard. I really like the Pickens pick. I guess you could say the jury's still out as far as Leal goes. Austin adds excitement. And then, you're typically 6th and 7th round picks, you're going to see them cut teeth on special teams, most likely, once it's preseason and such. And you just, kind of get excited to see their growth, to see what they turn into. So probably one of the more exciting drafts maybe since, I don't know. Trying to think back. since maybe 2017. I don't know. Just because you have like yeah, I don't know. To me, it just excitement's about the best way I can summarize it.
No, I get that. Yeah, it wasn't exciting. I mean, just to have those picks and some of the uncertainty of who the quarterback's going to be and to find out who that was certainly really exciting. Dave, any final questions for the guys?
No. Did you learn anything more about maybe your scouting process? I mean, was there one takeaway? Look, we all grow in this every year and make mistakes and try to learn from them. Did you feel yourself maybe grow in one particular area or position, maybe that you scout? I always like to kind of discuss the process at the end of this thing, sometimes more so than or after we've really dissected the players. So is there anything that you felt that you grew in or learned in the scouting process throughout this offseason here?
For myself, I think I think I improved looking at the guys in the trenches, the offensive and defensive line, based on where I felt they'd go and where they went. I think I did a fairly good job there, and there's always room for improvement, but I think that was definitely a step up for me.
Andrew?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I've always gravitated towards defensive guys and then also wide receivers. And I think, just in terms of how I would, select draft profiles, that reflects that as well. The big thing for me is, traditionally I always like watch a player and say, okay, yeah, this guy's going to make it. I mean, to try to actually like put a grade on him, throughout the draft profile process was kind of challenging for me just because I've never really, stuck a grade to somebody. So, I mean, there were some guys early on like Logan Hall, which looking back, I was probably, way too low on. I mean, to me, he just immediately like, said, all right, yeah, this guy's going to make it. I don't know where he's exactly going to play, but, just grade wise, it's like, okay, I had this guy maybe too low. So yeah, that part of it, as time went on and then just reading everybody else's draft profiles, I was getting like a better handle of it.
Yeah, well, it was our first year for the grading system as well. I thought Jonathan did a great job of putting that together, but certainly there are things you look back on and, wish you might have changed. I know I have those thoughts, and I'm sure we'll tweak the system and we'll all be better for it next year. All right, guys, I think it's going to wrap up our time today. Appreciate you guys so much. Andrew, Tom, you guys were fantastic during the pre-draft process and certainly during the draft and in a couple of days since the draft has taken place. So we look forward to hearing from you guys, reading your stuff. I know, Andrew, you still have a bunch of stats content coming up. Tom, I know we're finishing up the undrafted articles, and I'm sure we'll find some stuff for you to write about here in the offseason. So thank you guys again.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks as well.
And welcome back to the Terrible Podcast. And again, our special thanks to Tom Mead and Andrew Shaver. Be sure to follow both guys on Twitter. You can follow Tom at THMead3. That's MEAD3. And you can follow Andrew on Twitter at AShaver13. Fantastic job by both those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we'll probably continue on with a couple more draft roundtables going forward here. And so happy to have Andrew on board. I think we were close to bringing him on board once before, but I think time other commitments by him kind of got in the way in that. But he is, especially from a stats resource aspect, and he dove right into that tape, didn't he? He became part of the profile team, and like he'd been doing it for quite a while there. So and obviously people know Tom's been with us for a very long time as well.
Definitely. All right, Dave, I think we didn't have any other topics for us to discuss, so we can get to reader emails and close out today's show.
Yeah, not many of them here. Let's see. Mike Gretler writes in, just to clarify from yesterday's podcast, as someone who lived 40 minutes north and worked there at one time, the pronunciation is Conneaut Lake.
Okay.
Love the podcast. Have been a daily listener since the beginning. You could say I'm strung out like a research monkey. He says, my comment or input to you And Alex is stop giving the voice to 1 or 1.5% of who disapprove of your unbiased opinion. The 98% of us roll our eyes because of our appreciation for your hard work. Your staff does, and really could care less about who want a shiny gold colored glass full of illusion. Please continue to do what you do, Dave. Saddened to hear that you probably going to take a lesser role, but do understand. I truly appreciate the high quality content. Thank you to every one of you who make me wish there were more Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays in a given week. Well, thank you for that as well, Mike. So let's see here. We got
if we can make someone wish there were more Mondays, I guess we're doing all right.
I guess.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Let me see what else we have here. Chris Lookart writes in, just want to recommend a few songs to the dude last podcast. A feel-good breakup song would be Cannon Smith, Colder Than You, or Canaan Smith, Colder Than You. I'm not familiar. Let me run that through the Google machine.
Yeah, don't know it either.
I guess it just not looking at it, looks like the guy's country and western song, but Colder Than You is the recommendation there. And I get Get In Your Feelings sad song I would recommend is Morgan Wallen 865. I'm not familiar. That's
also country.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the stuff that you listen to, Alex?
I get on country kicks sometimes. It's usually a bit older, more Tim McGraw, like I mentioned, the Brooks and Dunn kind of thing. But I know Morgan, I think it's Wallen. Yeah, I know he's one of the top country artists currently.
Okay. Do you listen to a lot of Faith Hill, Alex?
Faith Hill, yes. Carrie Underwood, heck no. You get that nonsense out of my Spotify playlist.
Oh, you don't like Carrie Underwood? I think she's absolutely fantastic, man. I like Faith Hill too, but I think Carrie, some of the songs are fantastic.
We all know which way the arrow is pointing every Sunday night. It'll be different with Sunday night. We got no Al Michaels on Sunday Night Football this year.
Yeah, we got Melissa Stark back though. Wow.
Okay, I hadn't followed the whole configuration.
I'm excited about that. Let's see here. I think we let's see. Tim writes in. I think maybe we got this the other day.
Wasn't there a long email that you were gonna?
Oh yeah. There was one in here. Let me see.
Probably a good time to.
Yeah.
Check that out.
Draft assessment. In GMKC We Trust is the title. This is from John Weissire, I think. Dear Dave and Alex, many thanks and congratulations to the two of you and members of the Steelers Depot team for your truly admirable and terrific work throughout the pre-draft and post-draft process. I felt completely informed and knowledgeable over the past weekend, and this made the otherwise mundane draft process exciting and enriching. He says, as requested, outline below is my assessment of the Steelers 2022 draft, in which I would suggest a B- overall grade. He says, Mason Rudolph, the Steelers clearly announced that Mason is simply not in play for 2022 and beyond. A reported first-round grade while serving as a 4-year backup to a future Hall of Fame quarterback should position Mason as a no-brainer heir apparent. But the Steelers bringing in a mid-range free agent and 2 draft picks, not to mention Dwayne Haskins last year, signals that Mason is not in play at all. He will not accept a third-string role. Expect him to be traded or for maybe a 7th or released outright toward the end of training camp is his first comment. I could not agree more with you, John, at that point. I will be, barring injury here, I will be quite surprised if Mason Rudolph is on this 53-man roster moving forward. As far as the draft picks goes, he has Kenny Pickett in A. He says no first-round pick is a guarantee, and Kenny clearly has some uncertainty. However, the Steelers got their first choice, and he says the die is now cast. He says he expects good things, okay? Pickens, A-, massive upside ceiling with plenty of favorable attributes. The only concern is reported character and maturity issues, which could be help me
exasperated.
Yeah, thank you for 200, please. By a highly immature wide receiver room without a proven leader, and led to some degree by Chase Claypool, who has yet to demonstrate leadership and maturity. You know, that's a good point right now about this wide receiver room is where's the leadership going to come from? You know?
It's a good point about the entire offense, frankly. But I think Claypool did maybe start to grow up a bit late last year, kind of realize what was going on. But you're right. You talk about positional coaches that need to have a good impact. Frisman Jackson, I mean, hopefully this guy can bring some of that because this room needs it. I do like that Jackson has recently coached in the college and pro game. I think that puts him closer towards some of these young guys like Pickens and like Claypool.
Yeah, say what you will about Juju and all like that, but I think he got it, you know.
He did.
Overall, and I think some of the criticism of him was way over the top there. And you're right, Frisman Jackson is the new leader of the wide receiver room.
Right.
Not a wide receiver for the time being here. DeMarvin Leal, he says a C. He says offers a high ceiling, but seems to be a bit of a tweener relative to defensive line niche and strength. As a third round pick, he will need to make the roster unless he completely flames out. Yeah, look, barring something happening, Leal is going to be on this 53-man roster as a third round pick. Calvin Austin, he has an A-, exciting pick with great possibilities. Will the size be an issue in the men's league? He questions there. Connor Hayward, a B-, he says a Swiss Army knife, but a hard to see how he fits aside from being creative asset and special teamer, not sizable enough to play on the line. He says, I respect the discussion of his attributes over the past weekend's podcast. He says, in my view, his value will be optimized by taking the roster spot of Derek Watt, which he believes is feasible. Mark Robinson, B-. He says, I offer this grade based upon his high ceiling upside despite the high level of risk. He says, in his view, he's a practice squad player in 2022, and this is favorable and strategic. Allow him to learn and develop, he says. The last pick, Chris Oladokun, and it is Oladokun, right?
Yeah, Oladokun is how I'm saying it.
But where does the N come in there? Oladokun, is it?
At the end? The N?
No, the N in the middle of it. How does that figure into the pronunciation? It's Oladokun, right? It's not dunk, it's dunk. D-O,
right, yeah.
It's pronounced D-O-N-K-I-N, right?
Is it? I haven't seen a phonetic pronunciation of it, but I knew I was saying it incorrectly when I was saying dunk, so I was saying doke, Oladokun.
Okay. There is.
I may be slightly off. I'm not 100%
no,
sure.
I think you're right there. I think John misspelled it in his email there.
Okay, yeah. Oladokun spelled Oladokun.
Okay, so
There's
it's
no N in the middle.
Oladokun.
Yes.
Okay. Oladokun. And that's what that I mastered that one now a lot quicker than I did Chukwuma Okorafor.
Hey, but you got there.
I got there. In light of my view of the Steelers' assessment of Mason Rudolph, Chris is well positioned to be the third string quarterback who will not dress on Sundays, but his skills and characteristics are intriguing to stick on the roster when Mason is traded or released, he says. Another thing about Chris, it gives you kind of a quarterback scout team that give you a couple different looks on a couple of guys that you're going to have to play too, right?
Yeah, I think there's an asset to that, the mobility factor of it, and so I think there's probably a little bit of value in that, certainly more than what a Mason Rudolph would provide.
He gave that an A- selection grade there. So to recap, he has Pickett an A, Pickens an A-, Leal a C, Austin A-, Hayward B-, Mark Robinson B-, and Oladokun and A-. He says, we'll work in a few fungible running backs through undrafted free agency and training camp. One will stick to the running back room, he says. Next year, we draft a stud inside linebacker and a cornerback, he says. Thank you all again for everything. John, down in Fort Myers, Florida, Weesire is his last name there. So appreciate the email, John.
Yeah, thank you, John. Appreciate all the emails, and I think we'll come back on Monday, Dave.
I think we will. And thoughts on my terrible take yesterday on post rookie mini camp editions. And what is your terrible take today?
My terrible take today is on why, because everyone says after NFL drafts, you got to wait 3-4 years to grade the class. I think that's crap. I think you can do it basically within 1 or 2 because these guys are playing right away. And maybe, as you go through the years, you can find out more and more about the classes, but you get a good sense coming out of year 1 right now. Like, Najee Harris is a dude, Pat Fryermuth's a dude, Kendrick Green struggling pretty mightily. I think you only need 2 years. It was about the additions. They always add more veterans after rookie minicamp and stuff like that. Was that the terrible take? Yeah. No, I think you're right. I mean, the question is just what position it's going to be. I mean, I think I would personally add at least a running back, just because I think that room behind
I would too.
In terms of a pure runner there's nothing there. Unless you really count on McFarland, which I don't think anyone can at this point. And Snell to me is really a special teamer. So yeah, I think it's a good point. It's one of those. It's like the when Dick LeBeau read The Night Before Christmas, like your yearly reminder of this roster's probably not done yet. And also, I think you pointed out as well, maybe some roster cuts coming as well as the undrafted guys finally officially ink their contracts. There's probably going to be some minor roster moves happening soon.
Yeah, I think we got. What did I tell you last night? How many total under contract?
Is 89, I believe you said.
Right.
With 3 to go.
Right, with 3 official undrafted free agents to go. So there is going to be some roster cuts. I'm surprised we haven't heard them yet, but I guess because they're going to wait, until the ink's dry on that kind of stuff. But I kind of thought at least by Friday, and look, it's almost noon Eastern time now. I kind of wonder if we'll find out today who those roster cuts will be, but they probably won't be shocking names nonetheless. So you think if this was like name that tune, you would say I can grade that class in 2 years.
Well, I don't know what name that tune is because I'm not old enough to get that, so I apologize. Let's not go down a rabbit hole about that. But yeah, I think
Kathy Lee Gifford actually was on that game show as the as kind of the singing guest on that aspect, and it was all about they give you clues about a song, and then the two combatants would say I can name that tune in 4 notes, and then the next guy would either say I can name that tune in 3 notes, and then the next guy would say name that tune, and then they would give
this was entertainment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely good. Throw that one into the YouTube machine. So
that wouldn't work well today. You just hold up Shazam and be like, all right, that's what the tune is.
I think it's sort of along the lines of that game show, but I mean, it was a very popular game show back in, I think it was Wink. I can't remember. Wink Martindale was the host of that or not. I don't remember.
Wink Martindale?
Wink
like
Martindale.
The Ravens DC? Wink Martindale?
No. Yeah, there's actually, oh Lord have mercy. This is killing me now. Wink Martindale was an American disc jockey, radio personality, game show host, and television producer. In his 6-decade career, he is best known for hosting Gambit from 1972 to 1976, Tic Tac Doe from 78 to 85, High Rollers from 1987, and Debt. He was Wink Martindale is better known for being really a game show host, if you will. And I don't think he did name that tune. I'm trying to remember who did name that tune, but I guess it wasn't him. But yeah, there is another Wink Martindale, and it wasn't real associated with the Ravens.
I guess he's with the Giants now. He got fired, but. I think with draft classes, like I said, I mean, obviously 3-4 years you learn more than you've learned in 1 and 2. But I think, is it fair to say we have a pretty good feel of what the Steelers 2021 draft class looks like and is going to turn out to be?
2021?
Yeah, as in like the Najee Harris, Pat Fryermuth. Like we have a pretty good feel like who's going to succeed and who's not going to succeed.
Yeah. I mean, obviously would like to see, what happens with a guy like Loudermilk here moving forward. The defensive back kind of have my questions about moving forward here, but I mean, it's all going to revolve around Najee and Pat Fryermuth anyway, right? I mean, that's how that group's going to be judged.
Yeah, and then I would say after this year at least, that's why I said 2 years. Like you're going to basically know who these guys are. Once you get through that second year and you go through that sophomore leap, and you guys really will find out who sinks and swims.
Okay.
So that's my thought. Also, it looks like maybe Johnny Olsen was the host of Name That Tune. John Harlan. Any of those names ring a bell?
Johnny Olsen. Well, Johnny Olsen's always been hitting Johnny Olsen, kind of the background announcer on The Price is Right. Wasn't he?
Maybe. It says it was narrated by on Wikipedia. Maybe that isn't the actual host. I'm not sure how they're. Red Benson? No. Bill Cullen? Dennis James. There's like a million hosts for the show. I can't figure it out.
Well, just Google a couple of those past episodes and name that tune. I'm sure you'll be busy doing that today.
Oh, that's how I'll spend my Friday night.
There you go. All right. In the meantime, we will be back on Monday, possibly another roundtable again. We'll see if we get a couple more of the guys on here. You can follow me on the Twitter machine at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do, want to donate, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. If you want an ad-free version of the site, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button, upper right navigational bar. Once again, thanks to Tom Mead and Andrew Shaver for sitting in today. And until Monday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.